Max. I wanted to let you know that Father's Day is coming up soon. And so I have a very cool book about one of the coolest animal fathers I know, Mr. Seahorse. We gave this to Mr. Littner back in 2015 when Rylan was only 2 years old and you would have been 4 years old. So we've had this book for a long time. We love this book. Mr. and Mrs. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. Mrs. Seahorse began to wiggle and twist this way and that. "It's time for me to lay my eggs," she said. "Can I help?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Oh, yes, thank you," said Mrs. Seahorse. And she laid her eggs into a pouch on Mr. Seahorse's belly. "I'll take good care of our eggs," said Mr. Seahorse. "I promise." As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a group of trumpet fish hidden in a patch of reeds. Let's see if you can find the group of trumpet fish in a patch of reeds. Oh my goodness, there they are. And now Mr. Seahorse is in the patch of reeds. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Stickleback?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Delighted," replied Mr. Stickleback. "I just built a nest and right away Mrs. Stickleback laid her eggs into it. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "Keep up the good work," said Mr. Seahorse, and then swam away. As Mr. Seahorse gently drifted through the sea, he passed right by a lionfish hidden behind a coral reef. Do you see the lionfish? There he is. Look at that. And now Mr. Seahorse is behind the coral reef. I can see Mr. Seahorse a lot better though. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Tilapia?" said Mr. Seahorse. Mr. Tilapia couldn't answer. His mouth was full of eggs. I know, said Mr. Seahorse. "Mrs. Tilapia laid her eggs. Now you're taking good care of them until they hatch." Mr. Tilapia nodded his head. "You must be very happy," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. Oh, look, you can see the eggs in Mr. Tilapia's mouth. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a pair of leaf fish hidden among the seaweed. That's so hard to see them. I think I might see an eyeball though. There they are. And now Mr. Seahorse is hidden among the seaweed. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Curtis?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Perfectly fine," replied Mr. Curtis. "Mrs. Curtis laid her eggs and I have them stuck on my head. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." Oh, I can see them right there on his head. They're pink. "You're doing a good job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. Ooh. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a stonefish hidden behind a rock. It is so hard to see that stonefish. Let's see if we can find him. And look at Mr. Seahorse is now hidden behind a rock. He looks exactly like that rock. He blends in so well. That's very good camouflage. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Pipe?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr. Pipe. "Mrs. Pipe laid her eggs along my belly. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "You should feel proud of yourself," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam away. Oh my goodness, look at how big Mr. Seahorse's belly is getting. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Bullhead?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Tip-top," replied Mr. Bullhead. "Mrs. Bullhead laid her eggs, and the eggs hatched. Now I'm babysitting." "You're doing a fine job," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam on his way. The time had come for the seahorse babies to be born. Mr. Seahorse wiggled and twisted this way and that. At last, the babies tumbled from Mr. Seahorse's pouch and swam away. One baby turned around and tried to come back into the pouch. "Oh no," said Mr. Seahorse. "I do love you, but now you're ready to be on your own." Look at all those little babies. He took such good care of them. Just like your daddy takes good care of you. And this is the story of some of my favorite animal dads. And my most favorite one, Mr. Seahorse.